Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode here on African Confessions. The following story that you're going to be listening to, it was sent to me by one of our admin, and this is the translation of the message that she sent to me. The translation reads like this. Hello, Brother Nanshi, how are you? Can you please post my own story, Is It an Identity? So, my brother, I am a young South African man, and I am single because I have tried dating, but I can't do that anymore because of the rituals that I did. But I have been making a lot of money because I went to Mozambique and I then took this thing. I don't know if it is like a tokology, because it is very different from the normal tokologies that we know here in our country. When I went there, I was given something that looked like a snake, but this thing, it has since changed itself. It is more like a human being that is now my wife that I sleep with. So at that time, Brother Nashi, I was just working at this other Indian supermarket. So in our location, there was this other man, and this guy, I'll just call him Alfred. He was from Mozambique. This guy, we never knew that he was from Mozambique because of the way that he used to speak our language so fluently. It was only after this Alfred had been kicked out by his wife. This was after they had finished building their house, because this woman, what she did is that they got married, but it was just a fake marriage, and then she started building a house for him. The time that she saw that the house was now complete, that was when this Alfred was just kicked out. So my mom was someone who really felt sorry for people that will be struggling, especially that came out of South Africa. So my mom then went and picked this Alfred up and came and gave him the permission to build like a small back room. It was just a shack at the back of our house. This is how I got into contact with this Alfred. So he was also going to the same church that we were going to. So since he knew that I was someone that loved hip-hop, making music a lot, because I always told him that I wanted to be featured in this other magazine that had came out. It was called SA Hip Hop Mag. During that time, it was still brand new, so you could just send your demo tapes to them. Then if they had your tracks, then they would feature you on their magazine. So I always bought those magazines, even though I was really struggling at that time. So each and every time when I would buy a new magazine, then I would go with it to him, and I will tell him that one day I was going to become one of the biggest rappers to ever come out of South Africa. This guy, he would even go with me to the studio, because we used to stay so late in the studio just making some music. Then one day he told me that he wanted to return back to Mozambique because he wanted to sort out this woman who had made him to build the house, and after that kicking him out, he said that he wanted to go to Mozambique to show her that she was not clever. And what was hurting him at that time, it was because this woman was now staying with another man who was from Zim. So this man also ended up buying a taxi for that woman, and that guy, he just left it. We were told that the woman just hired some taxi drivers who came and then beat that guy up and told him that he was staying with another man's wife. So he then ran away. This was after the guy had helped him. This was after the guy had helped her to buy a taxi. So this was what she was doing, just taking advantage of these foreign guys who were blind. And he told me that he wanted to go to Mozambique. I then started to ask him a lot of questions, and he saw that I was really interested in going with him. He told me that if I was willing, then I would go with him. At first, I wanted to apply for a passport. He said, no need for that. We were just going to use the African way, just crossing the border, no papers, no what. So I raised the money because he said that I'm not sure how much they are going to charge you that side. So if you can raise at least somewhere around 30,000 rands, and during those days, this was a lot of money. You know, these Indian guys, they don't pay. At that time, at the supermarket where I was working, I was only getting 950 since I was working as the security at the door. So I raised the money that was needed. This 3,000, it did not include the transport. The transport was separate, and the money that was needed to be smuggled into Mozambique. As for our return trip, he said I should not worry. That traditional healer was going to sort everything out. After that, I lied to my mom and I told her that I had found a job in Mpumalanga. Whilst we were in that consultation room, I was then told that a deal was going to be made, but this turned out to be a deal that I did with the devil. This man then told me that I was going to have a deal with his ancestors. He then started looking in his consultation room. He took out this other bag that was full of herbs. He then took this bark of a tree and he gave it to me. He gave me just a few pieces, and he told me that when I would return back to South Africa, I was only supposed to use these herbs when I would be in the studio. Before I would record, I was supposed to take one of those tree barks that he had given me, and I was supposed to chew on one each and every time that I'll be rapping on a song. Then I had to chew one before I would have started rapping. So this was going to make my fans to be hooked up on my songs like 24/7, and this was going to make me to become very famous within a short period of time. So he told me that I was supposed to use it only for recording my first album. Then after I would have recorded my first album, I was supposed to return back to Mozambique so that I can be strengthened. Brother Nashi, as someone that had never had a spiritual encounter in my life, after I had been given these spiritual powers, I then lost control, or I can say that these demonic powers that were given to me, they started controlling me. I returned back to South Africa, and this was quite easy. You won't even imagine the things that you can do when you are under the protection of these powerful traditional healers. Along the way, we were never stopped. No policeman even stopped us. We just walked through the border. We just walked out of Mozambique and coming into South Africa as if I was coming out of my parents' house and just crossing the street and going to my friend's house. No questions were asked. We returned back home. Then I continued going to work. So when I had raised enough money for my first mixtape, I then went to the studio. Even the deal that was given to me by the producer, he just made me to record almost for free because I took that little root and I just chewed it. And this made that producer to just obey my command. So each and every time that I would rest, then I would take the herbs, then I would just chew on them just a little bit, then I'll start recording. And the songs, yes, indeed, even though we were still mixing and mastering them, but each and every time when you would listen, it will feel really good. You will feel really good because they had this spiritual connection that they will be having with you. Brother Nashi, I then tested this charm on this other girl that I always loved. And this girl, she was like a Christian, 100% Christian. Those ones that tell you that they will never sleep with a man until they get married. So I just wanted to test it out. I then went to her place and I had this herb in my pocket. As she was talking to me, I then took it and I started to chew on it, and she was like, what is that smell? There is something that is smelling like garlic. And then I just tested it out and I said, oh, it is my mouth that is smelling like garlic. Do you want to taste my mouth? And she moved close to the place where I was. Then we started kissing, and me and that girl, we made love, and I broke her virginity. After that, I just dumped her because I didn't like her anyway. She invited me to her church, and this was like the biggest mistake that she did. When I went there, Brother Nashi, I slept with so many women. I didn't even care. I slept with married women. I went wild. I was sleeping with these young women. I was sleeping with married women, your single women. I ended up sleeping with the church elders' wives, including the pastor. I was also sleeping with her because of that herb that had been given to me by that man in Mozambique. So because of this herb, I then managed to sneak into this other company because at church there was this other church elder's wife that I was sleeping with. So her husband, through him, I was able to get a job. When I was working at that company, that was when I started to do a lot of side hustles. And then I got involved with some guys that were your tenderpreneurs. That is how I started making money. So these guys, they were supplying coal to Eskom, and I was also involved in some of those deals. That is how I made so much money. And as I was making money, I then forgot the source of my power. And that man's ancestors then left me and they returned back to Mozambique. The moment that they returned back to Mozambique, Brother Nashi, I then noticed, because I was on my way, I was traveling from Eastern Cape and I was returning back to Gauteng. In my car, that was when I saw that on the passenger seat, there was a snake that was there. But this snake, when I panicked, it told me that I was not supposed to panic because it was here for my protection. It told me that I should not return back to Mozambique, for if I was going to return back to Mozambique, that traditional healer was going to feel jealous and was going to take this snake back, and I was going to be poor again. The snake said, "Do you want to be poor again?" And I said, "No, I do not want to be poor. Just wanting to become a musician, it was like my way out of poverty. So now that I was rich, there was no need for me to think about music anymore." This snake then seduced me and told me not to return back to Mozambique. And when this traditional healer appeared to me in a dream, and the traditional healer told me to quickly return back to Mozambique. At that time, this old man was quite sick. He told me that I was supposed to return back to him to return this snake, because he did not give me this snake. It was a bark of a tree that he gave me. So I was supposed to go there to sort out the mess. So I refused, Brother Nash, in my dream, and I said, "This snake, I am keeping this snake." He then disappeared. Even the day that he died, he visited me and he said that this was his spirit that I was looking at. He was dead, and I was supposed to go and return back his tokologies, and I refused still because of the money that I was making. Brother Nashi, that was when this snake started to demand sex from me. Yes, I started having sexual intercourse with a snake, because this snake, before it had became this little woman, it used to have like a woman's private parts, like at the tip of its tail, and each and every time that I would sleep with it, it was quite painful. But this snake, it is the one that gave me all the wealth that I have. Dear listeners, right there was a message that was sent to me by our dear brother. Strange things, they do happen in this world. Sure.